Welcome to You Brew Kombucha. Today, we're gonna go over the differences between Jun and Kombucha. So I get a lot of questions from different homebrewers out there asking if I ever brew Jun or if I'm ever planning on doing videos on Jun. I will say, just as a disclaimer, that I have never brewed Jun before, but I do know a little bit about it just by virtue of doing a ton of research on kombucha. Jun is actually a very similar culture to the kombucha culture. It's brewed fairly similarly, with the main difference just being that while kombucha can be brewed with any type of tea, whether it's white tea, green tea, oolong tea, black tea, or pu'er tea, Jun can only be brewed with green tea. And while kombucha can be brewed with primarily cane sugar, Jun scobies prefer to be brewed with honey. But other than that, the process is fairly similar, and the taste is actually pretty similar as well. The main difference is that Jun tends to have a very light flavor and is more mellower and more refined than kombucha, which can sometimes be a little more robust. Jun is typically referred to as the champagne of kombucha because of its lighter flavor. And so a lot of people wonder, can you brew Jun with a kombucha SCOBY, or can you brew kombucha with a Jun SCOBY? And in general, based on my research, the answer is no. Even though their cultures are fairly similar, there are some differences in the unique makeup of what the yeast and bacteria are within those cultures. So like I mentioned earlier, Jun scobies tend to process honey and green tea a lot better than it can process other types of tea or other types of sugar sources. Kombucha is actually a bit more adaptable than Jun because you can use any type of tea to brew kombucha, whereas Jun just relies on green tea. So while there are a lot of resources online that kind of walk you through the step-by-step of converting a kombucha SCOBY into a Jun SCOBY, or vice versa, I'll admit I haven't gone through and tested any of those methods, but if you're curious about trying it out, definitely do your due diligence and research and then tell me how it works down in the comment section below. If you're interested in brewing Jun, find yourself a culture that's specifically intended for brewing Jun. And if you're interested in brewing kombucha, find yourself a culture that's specific for kombucha. You can't really mix and match because the unique makeup of the bacteria and yeast are specific to each type of culture. If you end up feeding a culture something that it's not used to processing, you could end up degrading it or weakening it over time. You could put it at risk for developing mold, or you could end up with a drink that's not at all like the one that you were hoping to produce. I actually prefer brewing kombucha over Jun for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because honey is a lot more expensive than cane sugar. So in general, it's just a pricier brew per gallon to end up with something that is very similar to kombucha. So since honey is more expensive than cane sugar, it costs more per gallon to brew a gallon of Jun than it does to brew a gallon of kombucha. So if you're after the lighter, more subtle taste of Jun, then you can actually pretty easily replicate that flavor with a kombucha SCOBY. Like I mentioned earlier, kombucha SCOBYs are a lot more adaptable than Jun SCOBYs, so you could actually use a kombucha SCOBY and brew it with white tea or green tea if you're not particularly a fan of the more robust flavor that black tea brings to the party. And if you like the taste and flavor that honey brings to Jun, you can actually use honey as a flavoring during the second fermentation process of kombucha making. So between the two, I personally just haven't found a need to go and seek out a Jun SCOBY when I love the taste of the kombucha that my kombucha SCOBYs produce, and if I want a more subtle, lighter flavor, I can just tweak the second fermentation and the tea type that I use in order to achieve that. So if there are any Jun fans and experienced Jun brewers out there, let me know if I've missed any nuances there. I admit I don't have a ton of experience with brewing Jun at all, but if you're a big fan of it, let me know what it is that you love about Jun. Tell me how it differs from the process of brewing kombucha, because I'm sure at some point or another I'll end up brewing a batch anyhow just to see what the differences are, but I'm curious what your perspective is. So definitely comment down below and share what tips and tricks that you have there. If you have any questions about brewing kombucha, though, which is my favorite beverage of choice, be sure to check out youbrewkombucha.com. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram, you can follow me at youbrewkombucha. Happy brewing!